Hello, and welcome to So You Think You Can Rule Persia? The podcast where we rate and review all the kings of Persia from Diocles to Yazdegerd III. I'm Serial, and my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Umberto, my pronouns are he, him. Okay, so welcome to episode 8, Darius I, also known as Darius the Great. So last time we went through a murder mystery trying to figure out who Bardia was, who he wasn't, and
Indeed.
how exactly he died of the many, many ways that happened.
Yeah, you know, when you're multiple people, you tend to die multiple ways.
Yeah, that happens. So it wasn't really a very political episode. The empire mostly stayed still. It was only 7 months of time. But we'll find out that under Darius, everything is going to be kicked up a notch, and we're going to...
Okay, I was wondering if you were going to say everything is going to...
No, not yet.
Everything is going to explode.
Not at the moment.
Fun.
So we're going to see a bit of how Darius's reign worked and what are the consequences for stabbing a king through the chest with a spear.
You know, suddenly you find yourself there with the consequences of your actions, and then you start to consider your life choices.
Yes, oh no, consequences.
I can foresee no repercussions to this. Absolutely none.
Right, so let's get to knowing who Darius is, because he's been a cameo in a few previous elements, but never like the protagonist yet.
I have heard, you know, because I know nothing about this subject, but people have started to give me snippets just because they interact with us on social media, and I've heard that Darius tends to be a fan favorite, so I am very, very excited about today's episode.
And with good reason. There is a lot to unpack with Darius, and we'll see all about it.
Okay.
The beginning is already good, you know that. Let's see how it goes then. So, Darius was born roughly in 550 BC from a man called Hystaspes, who was a member of the Achaemenid family. Although, according to Darius at least, a very distant cousin of the branch that Cyrus was part of. We don't know much about Darius' youth because, well, he wasn't important enough to be noticed at the time. But we have an idea that he was a spear bearer to Cambyses during the Egyptian campaign. So basically some sort of bodyguard official role, which is where my crack theory comes in, that
yes, I remember.
Cambyses was stabbed, so there. But there is no proof of that.
Who did it? Planning ahead.
Could be. Maybe you're going to stab one king, might as well stab two. But to start us off, I'm going to give you a quote from Darius himself. Because in this episode, I'm going to quote a lot from the Behistun inscription that Darius himself made. So it's basically a massive rock inscription with portraits of him and all his enemies. And over the head of each of the enemies, they're basically saying, "Hello, I am this person. I lied by saying I was king of this place. And Darius punished me."
Is the defamatory rock?
Yes, exactly.
I've heard of this, somehow.
Yeah, and it's one of the few documents we actually get from the point of view of Iranians in this time period, because everything else we've had so far has been Greeks telling us stuff, or Babylonians telling us stuff. This is the first time that we actually get, besides the Cyrus cylinder, the first time that we actually get Darius' version of the story and what he wants us to know about.
Interesting. I'm sure it will be absolutely objective, since he doesn't have ulterior motives to make himself look good and legitimate.
Yeah, of course. He's a nice guy. He's all right.
Okay, tell me, please.
So, let's start from it. On the Behistun inscription we have, "Says Darius the king, the kingdom which was taken away from our family, this I put in its place. I established it on its foundations. As it was formerly, so I made it. The sanctuaries which Gaumata the Magian destroyed, I restored them. For the people, the revenue and the personal property and the estates and the royal residences which Gaumata the Magian stole from them, I restored." So, if you remember, Gaumata the Magian is the supposed imposter
Bardia.
for Bardia. And as we can see, Darius is the good guy here, because he is putting everything back in order and ensuring that after this terrible, terrible usurper arrived, now everything is beautiful and fine.
Very reminiscent of the Cyrus cylinder and how he was like All of your idols shall be able to go to their origin places. All of the people banished to Babylon shall be able to return to their...
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to be within that groove, so he's trying to show himself as a good, legitimate ruler.
It reminds me of it. Like, I don't want to actually compare it, but it made me think of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a royal proclamation after all. It does have a certain tone that it needs to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So as we saw last time, Darius joined with 6 other nobles called Aspathines, Gabrias, Intiphernes, Megabyzus, Hydarnes, and Otanes.
Megabytes?
Yes,
Sorry.
He is my favorite. So the ones you should remember a bit more for the future are Megabyzus and Gabrias.
They're going to be Megabyte and Gabriel.
Okay, Megabyte and Gabriel. Good to know. We'll get to follow them
I'm so
around.
sorry. I don't mean this in the sense of I don't actually want to remember their actual names, but my brain made that connection so fast that there's no way I'm going to not mess up their names at some point. So these are the clique of this, the group of friends, the gang.
Yes, these 6 guys together with Darius are the conspirators that went together to murder Bardia. And if you remember, Otanes is the guy that started this plot, the one who figured out that, it wasn't actually Bardia, through his daughter and the ear cutting and the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, that's true, I remember that, yeah. At least for one of the iterations of Bardia.
Yes, one of the iterations. As with everything in Bardia, no idea. But, so, now that Bardia has been stabbed and his blood is congealing on the floor, everybody needs to decide, okay, so who's gonna be king now? There's 7 of us. What are we gonna do?
I love these moments, these kinds of usurpations and ascension to power, because it's so panic of the moment. We didn't think we would get this far, and now we're here. What do we do? I remember a similar one listening to Tullus Rankium when people assassinate Caligula. And then the Praetorian Guard is just standing there thinking, whoops, what now? So...
Yeah, this happens often when you kill a king. Generally, people haven't thought it out too far, and everything is chaos.
But you would think, when you're planning on murdering someone who's also someone important, you would think that you would put some more thought into it.
Yeah.
But the difficult thing is done now, and... okay, what next?
We need to figure out. So, for the decision of what happens next, we rely mostly on Herodotus, so... not a pinch of salt, like a big bag of salt for whatever's going to happen here.
Fair. I thought you would say we rely mostly on rock, paper, scissors.
It's close, honestly. We'll see how they decide the king, but it's not far from rock, paper, scissors. All right, so according to Herodotus, the conspirators wait 5 days to sort of clear their heads and think for themselves how should the government be run in the future. And then after these 5 days have passed, they all gather in the palace to try and decide, okay, how are we going to govern the empire now? What's going to happen? So Otanes, who was the one that started the plot, apparently suggests a democracy. Because, they all saw what Cambyses had done, and a single ruler can't be held accountable and will become evil and corrupt. So, a democracy is great because, everyone's equal and all political offices are assigned by lottery with some accountable representatives, so no one man can get too much power and go off the deep end. This is almost certainly not true. It's just Herodotus saying, look, they consider democracy. Aren't we Greeks cool?
Democracy, in quotation marks.
Yeah, sure, very... Athenian-style democracy, which is not ideal, but better than nothing.
I like the story. Okay, next option.
Yes, Otanes says this, but Megabyzus then speaks up and decides, you know what, no, I don't think democracy is the right choice for our empire. I think it's better, actually, that we, 7, rule together as an oligarchy. Because, he says, nothing is more foolish and violent than a useless mob. So he doesn't trust the people to actually be able to govern themselves. He thinks they'll just
make a right decision.
Yeah, I think they'll just be driven by their passions. They're not going to be competent. It's just going to be a whole mess. But if it's instead them 7, he says, if you choose the best men of the state, then the government is going to run properly. Since we're
Very
the best
humble.
men of the state, then
Very humble.
we're going to know how to run it.
Love it.
But then Darius stands up and says, well, I agree with Megabyzus about the dangers of democracy and the fact that people are easily corruptible and the mob is dangerous. But an oligarchy never really lasts. Because if we have an oligarchy, we're all going to try and one-up each other and try to gain more power, so there's going to be a lot of infighting, and it's going to be a mess for everyone.
Trust your friends, I guess.
Yeah. It's realistic, though. Fair enough. The triumvirate's
I know
all
you
collapsed.
punks. I know you're gonna make a mess the moment I turn my back.
So Darius says, you know what, the best idea is a monarchy. I mean, a monarchy isn't inherently bad. We all saw Cyrus. Sure, Cambyses was bad, but it depends on the man that's ruling.
Yeah. It depends on the one man that's ruling.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that we should have a monarchy, and also it's traditional for our empire. Let's not try and totally upend everything. We've already usurped a king. Let's not restructure our entire society. That would be a mess.
If it ain't broke.
Yeah. So Darius says this, and everybody agrees. Yes, we'll have a king. There we go.
How do we vote?
How do we decide who is going to be king among us 7?
Fun.
Well, they decide, you know what, the fairest way for this to be decided is to let the gods choose. So none of us is going to be given that authority. The gods are going to allow us to do whatever.
That's really good. If the gods meddled with, mortal business.
Well, how do we interpret the gods? Well, Darius suggests, you know what, let's all gather at dawn in this square of the city, and the person whose horse is going to neigh first will be king.
You can just train your horse. That's just...
You say that.
Yeah.
And as everybody goes away back to their homes, Darius consults with his horse trainer and says,
Obviously. That's ridiculous.
And he says, hey, I need this horse to neigh tomorrow at dawn. Can you deal with it? And the trainer says, of course, sure. I'll find a way to make this horse neigh. Just tell me which the square is going to be, and I'll make sure it'll happen.
Okay.
And Darius points his groom to the specific area, and, well, the horse trainer gets to work. This horse trainer notices that Darius's horse is a great stallion.
Of course.
Who is infatuated with a mare who is also there in the stables.
Oh, well, lucky them.
So what does this groom do? He decides that he will bring this horse and the mare to the square where the nobles are going to be meeting. And there he allows the stallion to mate with the mare.
In front of everybody in the square.
I mean, it's at night. It'll probably be fine.
Okay. Oh, yeah, it's at dawn.
Yeah, it's gonna be...
Oh, people wake up early.
Could be. I don't know. What are you gonna do? Talk against the person who stabbed the king? It's probably not the best time to be questioning their motives. But anyway, the groom takes these horses back and then tells Darius, everything is sorted. Just go there when you need to, and they'll be fine. So the next morning, all the nobles gather in the square, and Darius is the last one to arrive.
Ooh.
And as he arrives on his stallion, the sun begins to rise, and the stallion remembers that, this was the place where he had sex last night. And he whinnies in happiness.
Of course, because that's how everything works,
Yeah, that's
apparently.
how everything works normally. And so the nobles say, Darius, you clearly have been chosen by the gods to be our new king. All hail King Darius I. We will be your loyal subjects.
They all were okay with it?
Yeah, I mean, they decided
all
the day before.
All the nobles were...
Again, this is Herodotus.
I see what you meant.
See, there we go.
No conflict whatsoever. Everyone was happy with the decision, and it was just the right decision to make.
Yeah.
Trust me, bro.
But, as you're insinuating, the other nobles aren't exactly going away empty-handed, because they make a deal together with Darius. So first of all, they decide that since Otanes was the one who began the plot, he and his descendants should receive a yearly gift from the treasury for their service to the nobility.
Please don't stab me as well, thank you.
Yes, it's always good to invest in people who won't stab you to death if you're in power. While, however, every one of the 7 was going to be given the privilege of entering the palace unannounced and talking with Darius whenever they want, even with future kings. Except for one case, unless the king is sleeping with a woman. In which case, they should probably, leave some privacy and come back later, please.
Oh, okay.
That is an explicit
and if
clause.
The king
we'll see.
Is sleeping not with a woman? Do they get to, intervene?
Not specified. Apparently they do,
cool.
Maybe. We don't know.
Loophole.
Yeah, that's a loophole. If you ever become a Persian noble in 500 BC, you know what to do.
Ah, great.
And, of course, as new king, Darius decides that he wants to tie himself better with all these important noble families. And so he marries Cyrus's daughter Atossa, who is still around, who has been married to 2 kings already.
The girl, yes. Oh my god. She does really keep coming back.
Yeah, she's going to be next episode as well. So Darius marries Atossa. Then another daughter of Cyrus, which was previously unmentioned, called Aristone. So it's unclear if she was too young all this time to be in the story or if she's just being made up by Herodotus. We'll see. Then he marries the daughter of Bardia, called Parmis.
Okay.
And finally, the daughter of Atanes, the one who discovered Bardia through the ear-cutting trick.
Oh, yeah.
Because the good thing about polygamy is that if you need a lot of alliances, you can make a lot of alliances, and you don't have to just pick one.
I guess, yeah. Well, that makes sense.
You don't have to choose to marry one person. It's fine.
Marry everybody.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, so the interesting thing here is that he is marrying Cyrus's daughter, Atossa, which is going to give him a lot of legitimacy because, well, he's an illegitimate ruler.
Obviously.
And now the idea is that any child of Atossa's is going to be also descendant from Cyrus. So that's going to help with Darius's future.
So he already established that, hey, I am like a third cousin from this branch of the family, but now I am literally part of the family, so...
And it's interesting you mentioned the third cousin thing, because I've been saying that this has been the Achaemenid Empire for 3 episodes now.
Yes, I was a bit confused. But I am confused with most things, so...
Well, the thing is that we're not sure if Cyrus and Cambyses and Bardia were actually Achaemenids.
Wait, what?
Yes, because if you remember, in the Cyrus cylinder, Cyrus says that he is the son of Cambyses, son of Cyrus, son of Cambyses, son of Thyspes.
Yes.
And then he stops there.
Ah, yes.
He never says that he is an Achaemenid. But up comes Darius and he says, oh yes, I'm an Achaemenid. You know Thyspes, the furthest ancestor of Cyrus? Yeah, my furthest ancestor was his brother. And they were both sons of Achaemenes.
I see. But then why does Cyrus not mention that he's an Achaemenid?
Well, the thought there is that Darius is just pulling this out of his butt. He's just saying, oh yeah, Cyrus was totally an Achaemenid as well. It's totally fine.
Okay. So he's making up a common ancestor.
Yeah, and the fact is that there's also an inscription. If you remember the one under the portrait of Cyrus that we showed during the episode, the one under that says, I am Cyrus, King of Kings, an Achaemenid.
Ah, I see.
And it was made during the time of Darius to ensure that everybody expects that Cyrus is a real Achaemenid.
I love it that not everybody could read, obviously, but even if you could, then you were just getting these blunt statements of, I am this person and I am this.
Yeah,
Trust me, because I am obviously this. Look, it's a carving of this person, so how could you say no?
Yeah, monuments don't have much time to go into minutia and detail and nuance.
You shouldn't believe everything you read on the stones.
Yeah, that's a good principle overall. And yeah, so the idea is that we're not sure if the Achaemenid Empire starts now with Darius or if it started with Cyrus. We're not sure if Cyrus never mentioned Achaemenes just because Achaemenes wasn't very important at the time and Thyspes was the first big king of Persia.
I see.
Or if Darius just made up this ancestry to fit himself closer to Cyrus. But yeah, so this is the coronation done with. Darius is now king of kings, and he has inherited this very large empire. Problem is, it's on fire.
Oh, so it is falling apart. Okay.
Yes, because Everybody has seen that Bardia was murdered. And either because they believe Bardia was a legitimate king, or because they smell blood in the water and they see that a regime change is always a vulnerable time, and this is the time to rebel. Everything starts to go to hell.
So does Egypt rebel again?
Egypt, not very much, actually. Egypt is the last one.
I thought it would be them because, they're far away.
Yes,
so
basically everything else, but not Egypt, weirdly. Because Darius tells us in this Behistun inscription that right after gaining the throne, a man named Atrina made himself king of Susiana. And at the exact same time, a man called Nidintu Bel, claiming to be the son of the last king of Babylon, made himself king in Babylon and rebelled by taking all that chunk of Mesopotamia with him. So Darius tells us rather quickly that he sends first one army to Susiana, which is to the west of Persia.
To Susan.
Exactly. And he sends an army there, and his army manages to quickly defeat the local king, and the king is brought in chains to Darius, and Darius had him executed.
Because no mercy, unlike other kings.
No, not towards rebels. There is no dealing with them. But Darius himself is aiming for the bigger prize. He is aiming for Babylon, because one, Babylon is in the center of his empire and will snap it in two if he loses it.
Yeah.
And two, Babylon is extremely rich and important, so if he loses that, there go a lot of his funds to keep the empire together.
It basically was the most stable and established empire before the Persian Empire was even a thing, or the Median Empire was even a thing. They were already like, the Babylonian Empire, so it makes sense that they would have a lot of riches and a lot of things to...
Yeah, so it's important that he holds on to this area. So Darius himself leads the army going there. Heading towards Babylon, he defeats this Babylonian king in two separate battles, which incidentally both involve him crossing a river with horses and camels.
Might be the same battle, might be two.
Could be. I mean, he insisted on explaining both times that he had horses and camels, so I'm going to tell you as well.
Good for you. Good
there
for you,
go.
buddy.
At which point, Darius manages to lay siege to the city of Babylon and tries to conquer it. This time there is no happy crowds letting him enter. Like with Cyrus, no, this time the siege has to happen.
Yeah, and he actually has to siege Babylon, which has famously impressive walls and is prepared for a 300-year siege.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be difficult.
So good luck.
So, Darius lays siege to Babylon and stays there for a while. Stays there for a few months, and some more months, and some more months. Then 20 months pass.
Oof.
With him besieging Babylon, and the city is not falling. It's holding strong. It's always there.
That's what I thought would happen.
And there is even a prophecy that Babylon will only fall when a mule is going to have children.
Okay, well...
So, well...
Better give up now.
Yes, they're told, better give up, surrender, it's not going to happen. However, here we introduce a new character, who is Zopyrus, the son of Megabyzus.
Papyrus, the son of Megabyte?
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
So Zopyrus, who was noble youth, was there in the camp around Babylon and was trying to find a way to get into the city, but to no avail. There was no way through the walls, there was no weakness, nothing that he could exploit to get through. However, one day he saw a weird thing. He saw that one of the pack mules in the army had seemingly given birth to live young.
Which, to clarify, it can happen. It's just genetically improbable because of the chromosomes making up a mule being from two different species with different numbers of chromosomes. Usually there's something there that just doesn't quite split in two the way it should. And so you can't mix it with another set of chromosomes and give birth to a viable animal. But if this mule happens to have, on top of their normal genetic makeup, a different mutation that changes the number of chromosomes it has, then it could be possible that it could give birth. Like, it's been seen and heard of that mules give birth. It's just not common
likely.
Because it's, yes.
So Zopyrus sees this wondrous sight and says, well, the prophecy is going to be true. We're going to take Babylon soon. So he takes the only logical course of action and decided to cut off his own nose and ears, shave his head, and whip himself till he was bloody.
What?
That's exactly what Darius thought.
Excuse me?
Yes. Zopyrus presented himself in this terrible state to Darius, who probably spent the next half hour screaming, "Why? Why?"
Just curled up on the floor, What the Huh? The intense body modification.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. What is the explanation? Please tell me there's an explanation.
Darius asks him, "Who did this to you? What happened, Zopyrus? What the hell?" And Zopyrus says, No, I did it myself. It's okay, I meant to do
so
this.
I thought he was going to be like, the Babylonians. But he's just like, oh no, I just felt like it, man.
And he said, no. He says, "Don't worry, Darius, this is all part of my brilliant plan." Darius says, "Okay, I hope it's a good plan, because for your sake, mostly."
He's lost.
Yeah. And Zopyrus explains this plan to Darius. He says he's going to go to Babylon as a double agent. And Darius should send out on some specific days some of his least important soldiers around the city of Babylon and certain patrol routes. And then on the 20th day, Darius should assault the city.
Oh.
So Darius is probably very concerned for Zopyrus' mental health. But he says, okay, sure, I guess you've already chopped off your ears and nose. Let's give it a shot.
It's not like we can tell you not to do it now.
It's too late now. Might as well try.
We can't go back. Whoopsie.
So Zopyrus goes into the city of Babylon, crying and screaming, and he says, "Oh, help me, Babylonians, help me. The evil King Darius has punished me so terribly. Look in what a state I am. I've decided to betray him and come to your side, so I'll help you win this war and win your independence."
And so he gets in the city, how? Opening the gates?
Well, he goes to the front gate saying,
I see.
"Look at this terrible thing that happened to me. I'm willing to defect." And the Babylonians say, "Oh my god, you look terrible. Nobody would do this to themselves. Please come in. We'll help you." So Zopyrus enters the city and he explains the situation. He says, Darius has been terrible. He punished me for some random thing I didn't even do wrong. So I'm willing to help you out with the war. I know some of the secret plans that Darius has. If you give me a few men to command, I'll be able to attack some of his patrols when they're hiding, and I'll be able to defeat him this way.
For revenge!
Exactly. So the Babylonians think, okay, fair enough, it's good to have an insider. Let's give Zopyrus a small group of men. Let's give him about 500 men to command and ensure that will work
a
out.
small group of 500.
So on the day he had agreed with Darius, Zopyrus sends out his men to the place he knew a patrol would be, and each time he manages to defeat this Persian patrol. And the Babylonians promote him each time, saying, "Oh, good job! My goodness, Zopyrus, you're so talented!" And each time he gets more and more control of the army.
I see.
Until at the end, on the 20th day, Zopyrus manages to gain control over all the walls. And he is now the greatest commander that is present in Babylon.
That is not wise for the Babylonians.
Yeah, because they believed.
Why would you make the one outsider to, as much as he's helping you, why would you put him in charge of the walls,
Yeah, but, he seems to be angry against Darius, and he is horribly mutilated, so probably there's a reason.
When you mentioned that Darius should send some of his unimportant men to patrol, I so knew they were red shirts.
Yeah,
they
course.
were dead.
They were just sent there to be destroyed.
Not a chance.
So on the appointed day, Darius sends his men to assault the walls, and who is commanding them? Zopyrus.
Yeah, surprise.
We find that the walls are surprisingly free of defenders and the gates are open.
And none of the soldiers, I understand that you have a person above you who's giving you orders, but all of the soldiers were Babylonians, right? So wouldn't some of them be like, hey, should we leave the walls?
They're in the army. They're not meant to question orders. They're meant to follow them.
I see.
So Darius manages to enter Babylon and conquers the city, occupies the key places, executes the king, and then he decides just to make sure his message is clear, he impales about 3,000 Babylonians and razes its walls to the ground to ensure that they don't get any fancy ideas again.
But now Babylon is your own city, so why would you want it to not be protected? I guess because it's in the middle of your empire, and so
it's in the middle, and again, if it rebels again, you don't want to spend 20 months trying to find a way in again.
Yeah.
So he tries to make sure that it will never rebel again, and then he handed the city to Zopyrus as a gift in exchange for, the horrible mutilation. Although personally, I would never trust Zopyrus again. Because if he's willing to do that for stratagem, I'm not going to trust him ever, no matter what he tells me.
He's obviously not in a sane state of mind. This poor man. He needs some intense therapy and some vacations.
Yes, this is terrible, the poor man.
What 20 months of siege does to your brain, that you're like, okay, I need this to end, so I'm cutting off my ears and nose.
But it worked. Hooray.
Jeez. These people. It'll make anybody lose their mind, I guess. So.
But when Darius was spending 20 months outside the walls of Babylon, the rest of the empire wasn't idle. And Darius himself tells us in the Behistun inscription that he lost Persia, Susiana, Media, Assyria, Egypt, Parthia, Margiana, Sattagidia, Scythia.
What? So all of the empire is gone. Why do you care about Babylon so much? It was one city.
So all of this is gone and away, and it's terrible. So Darius decides, oh no, I need to do something to hold this empire together. Doesn't count if I'm king of nothing.
Oh, whoops. I forgot that the rest of the world existed for a moment.
So he heads back to Susiana, which was the first place that rebelled again.
Yes, Susan.
So he sends his army to Susiana, and fortunately, the local people see Darius' army coming. They realize it was a bad idea. They kill their own king and hand him over to Darius. And they say, please don't hurt us. We saw that you impaled 3,000 people. Let's not do this here.
JK. It was just
it was just a prank, bro. Just a prank.
Yeah.
So, phase 1 completed.
Recovered Susan.
Yes. Next we have in Media a man called Phraortes, who claims to be a descendant of Cyaxares, which is probably where the name confusion came from.
Yes.
He made himself king of Media, Armenia, Parthia, and Hyrcania, and probably was deciding, this is our chance, let's remake the Median Empire, time to take it back from Persia.
Woohoo! The old glory days.
So Darius tells us that he was only left with a small army made of loyal Persians and Medians. So he sent one of the conspirators, Hydarnes, against Phraortes in Media. And he defeated Phraortes in one quick battle and stayed in Media to wait for Darius. In the meantime, Darius sent an Armenian noble to try and take over Armenia, where he won 3 battles against the Armenian rebels and waited for Darius there.
I see.
But there again, this Armenian noble was defeated, so Darius had to send a new noble to try and fight Armenia, and he had to win 2 more battles before being in position to wait for Darius again. So this is 5 battles in Armenia so far. It's a lot of work. But with his man in position in Armenia and the other one in position in Media, Darius himself manages to march against the Medians to fight Phraortes. And he defeats Phraortes in battle personally, and this king is then handed over to Darius as a prisoner. At which point, Darius is not in a merciful mood. He had to fight at least 6 battles against this guy to get an important part of his empire back.
He just didn't want to let go.
Yes, it's the sort of, why won't you die sort of thing. And this time Phraortes does die, because Darius cuts off his nose, eyes, ears, and tongue.
Oh, come on. I get it. You're frustrated. It's been really hard. But really? Do you have to maim people this way?
Then he publicly displays this poor, maimed man at court, and then crucifies him in Ecbatana, so all the Medians know what happens to their king.
I have no words.
Yes, Darius is not the nice lovey-dovey Cyrus. Darius will end you.
Taking a page from the Book of Assyria.
Yes, he decides, you know, when they're rebelling, it's an emergency situation. I need to control all the damage.
I'm sure they won't rebel again.
You say? A new man of the family of Cyaxares made himself king.
Look at me. I seem to know where things are going,
Yes.
huh?
So Darius sends a new army who defeated this guy and brought him to Darius. And again, he repeated the process of priorities, so nose, ears, eyes, court display, and crucifixion.
Lovely.
Then, in the east, a new man makes himself king. Darius sends a new Persian noble to try and kill him. He's killed. Good, the east is sort of secured. And then we come to the déjà vu portion of the rebellions.
Huh?
Because a man appears in Persia saying, "Oh, I'm Bardias. I actually wasn't dead all along.
What?
I'm here to take
what?
back my throne. Help me."
Oh, I love this. Because it's ridiculous, but imagine it were true. And Bardia is just like,
Bardia
just
gets to
kidding.
die another time. So Darius says, "Nope, I already killed this guy once. I'm going to kill him as many times as I have to." So
Beautiful.
he sends his army to Persia and wins 2 battles against the usurper until he is finally captured and crucified by Darius, who apparently enjoys crucifixion.
Yeah. It didn't last much.
And then we get to the second part of Deja Vu, where Babylon rebels under a person claiming to be the son of the Babylonian king Cyrus had defeated. Darius then sent a new Persian noble, Intaphernes, one of the conspirators, try and put down the revolt, and he does it in one single battle, and there's no siege this time because there's no walls. So it's done. It's over.
Who thought rebelling against was a good idea? Exactly, when you have no walls to defend yourself.
Yeah, I guess they thought something would work out, but no, this is not the game that is being played.
So Bardia is back, Babylon rebelling is back.
Bardia is killed again. Babylon is destroyed again. Babylon isn't destroyed, but the rebels are all killed brutally.
I see.
And then finally, in autumn of 517, Darius defeats the rebellious Egyptians, but doesn't seem to be very brutal. Maybe the Egyptians weren't really that into the rebellion, because Darius shows respect for their religion and orders that their laws be codified.
Look at that.
So at the end of all of this mess of rebellions, Darius ends his list of battles and deaths and enemy kings in this way. Says Darius the king, "This is what I did. By the grace of Ahura Mazda, it was done in every way. After that I became king. I engaged 19 battles. By the grace of Ahura Mazda, I waged them and I seized 9 kings."
Okay. Yep.
Which, if it were me, I would read it less in a glorious way and more in an exasperated way, saying, "I engaged in 19 battles, and I had to capture 9 kings. Most rulers don't have to do this.
Now.
I haven't slept in 5 years. Please, I need to rest."
I live thanks to coffee and cigarettes. Someone, please.
I mean, you kill one legitimate heir to the throne, and you have to deal with all these consequences.
Well, I mean, who would have thought?
You know, mysteries.
You wanted your horse to neigh, so...
Yeah, happened. So finally, Darius is in control of the empire. And the good thing, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the good thing about conquering the empire from a million rebellions is that he doesn't have to care anymore about the local traditions. He can reform the empire in his own image.
Yeah. I mean, now it's not I am going to be the kind ruler, because that ship sailed long ago.
Yeah.
So I guess it doesn't matter now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And the thing is that, sure, it's all very well to do like Cyrus and just add on kingdoms, but that's sort of messy, and the administration is going to be difficult to mesh across the borders. Darius now has a brilliant opportunity to reforge the empire and invent pretty much all imperialism west of China.
At the expense of all the cultures and all the people living in those places, I guess.
Sort of. He isn't as brutal as you would expect in administering, but we'll get to it.
Are you sure?
We'll find out.
Because,
First he has to kill another person, then we'll get to that.
So much death. So much death.
Yes, he is.
Everything's covered with blood.
Oh no. But among the conspirators, not all is well. Because one day, Intefurnes, one of the conspirators, entered the palace and demanded to speak with Darius. He wanted to speak with the king. However, the guards there and a messenger told him, "I'm sorry you can't. The king is with one of his wives. Could you come back later, please?"
You know that deal you made
the
where,
only
like,
condition
if
you
one of
have.
you is, like, you don't want to be, come on, just wait outside for a moment.
Yeah, it's okay. It won't take long.
Your call is important to us, and as soon as one of our operators is available.
So, Intefurnes believes that these guards are lying. He says, no, I don't believe this. I think you're just trying to keep me from the king.
I don't think he's with a woman. That
Never.
cannot be.
So he decides to cut the nose and ears off of these guards.
Excuse me?
Just because he can.
Out of what?
And he hangs them around their neck as a necklace, like a sane person would do.
I don't think... I mean, first, don't do that just because they're people, but in this context, isn't Darius going to be really mad that his guards are dead now?
I mean, the guards are still alive, they're just chopped up.
Well,
So yeah, the guards do go to Darius and say, something's
King?
changed, Intefurnes sort of mutilated us. Could you please give us justice? That would be nice, thanks.
If you have a free moment.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'll go take care of all the blood on the floor.
Yeah. I'll mop it up, don't worry, it's okay. So Darius at this point fears that this is probably going to be a conspiracy against him, because the last time people were mutilated in the palace, it was him doing that. So maybe he should be careful. Yeah. So he questioned each of the nobles to see if they approved of the mutilation. But they all claimed, oh, no, we don't know anything about this Darius. It must have been someone else. Who knows? Anybody can enter the palace. It's going to be okay.
Anybody can enter the palace. It's very secure.
Yeah, it's all right. So Darius then decides to imprison Intefurnes, all his sons and male relatives, and decides, you know what, I'm going to kill them. If nobody's going to speak up, I'll kill all of them.
So Intefurnes, but not the other nobles.
No, the other nobles...
Even though he did ask the other nobles.
Yeah, he trusts that they're actually innocent.
So he just puts the blame on Intefurnes. And it's like, okay, well, it was you who did this, so bye.
Yeah.
Friendship be damned.
And so Herodotus tells us that in the next days, Intefurnes' wife came to the palace, weeping and begging Darius for mercy, saying, hey, it was just my husband who was an idiot who did this.
My husband is an idiot, please don't.
Please don't kill all my male relatives. I would like to have them back, thanks.
Yeah.
So Darius then says, I'm going to grant you the life of one prisoner that you can choose. And the wife then says, okay, in that case, I'm going to choose my brother.
Okay.
And Darius says, why your brother and not your children or husband?
Yeah.
And
Weird.
then she replied that, well, she could probably get another husband and new children. There was no way she's going to get another brother since her parents were dead.
So, fair. Like, true. But... aren't you close to... I mean, I know that infant mortality was higher, but don't you have attachment to... I don't know. I'm not saying you should choose between your brother and, like, obviously it sucks either way, but, like... Nah.
Yeah, so at this point, Darius thought this was a good explanation, so he even gave the woman back her firstborn son before killing the rest of the family.
That's a little extra.
Yeah, so at least the family line can continue. All this last story is all Herodotus, so,
Well, who knows?
It's the usual, Eastern kings are scary and evil sort of spiel that he's going with, but we've seen that Darius isn't really shy about murder, so it could have happened.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it wasn't that terrible and a lot thirsty and torturous, but, lots of people died anyway, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, at this point, Darius is in control of the empire. The empire is his. It's stable. Nothing is exploding.
He has his arms around it, and he's like, mine.
Yeah, it's his. It's finally secure. So he decides, you know what's a great thing to unify the empire and make me be well loved? Conquest.
Oh, yeah.
Yay, conquest.
More war.
Yes, because we hadn't had
Who
enough.
heard of culture? Nobody.
He can make culture later once he has a lot of money from pillaging other people.
I see.
So Darius sends a naval expedition to explore the Indus River. And the fleet arrived near modern Suez from the Indus River about 30 months later. So Darius then manages to use the information gathered from this fleet to conquer Sind and basically add the whole Indus River Valley to his empire.
Wow.
Sending his eastern border into India, essentially.
Yeah.
And this is a great catch because according to Herodotus, the Indus River Valley provides about a third of the revenues of the entire empire.
Whoa.
Because they have massive gold mines.
Oh, so they have metals.
Yes.
Because I was wondering what do they have over there? But it's pure old-time favorite gold.
Yeah. And this is actually the region where Herodotus tells us that there's giant ants digging up gold.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is the place.
So
this is when he says it. And yeah, so now Darius not only has the largest empire the world has ever seen, he now has 3 of the 6 cradles of civilization.
Impressive.
High score.
Yeah. And the others are safe because they're far away.
Yes, the others are safe because they're way too distant for Persia to reach them. But yeah. So now Darius decides that there were some loose ends that need to be tied up. Because Cyrus's death has gone unavenged. And all the Scythians, Herodotus describes as vaguely living between Ukraine and the Aral Sea, so both
somewhere there.
Getting into Europe, like roughly the northern steppe is how he describes it.
Yeah.
Darius has decided that he wants to deal with these people. He wants to ensure that they submit to him. He's not really planning to conquer them, because steppe people and all that, but he's deciding, I want them to pay tribute, I want them to stop raiding us, and I want to secure our northern border so we can be safe.
Okay. It sounds like a good plan.
Yes. So this is where we get our first expedition into Europe.
Hey.
Because Darius constructs a bridge of boats across the Bosphorus so that he can march directly from Anatolia into Europe and head towards the coast of the Black Sea.
Very badass.
Yeah, that's
a bridge of boats.
So he marched along the coast and crossed all the way past the Danube without encountering resistance. He's gone past the borders of the Roman Empire.
Yep.
And there, the Scythians are just continuously retreating. You know, they're doing the nomad thing. They're not engaging.
Yeah, they're like, okay, we move away.
If they don't have to, they're just going to move away.
What are you going to do? Raid our non-existent city?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So they just keep moving northwards. However, Darius isn't dumb. He's trying to ensure that he has control and a safe way back. Mm-hmm. So he builds several forts along the way as he keeps going north.
Yeah, so those places count as conquered.
Yeah,
now we keep
they're partially occupied and you can just keep moving forward.
Yes.
And also, I think there was relatively recently discovered an inscription of Darius in Romania from one of these forts.
Cool.
So that's really cool, because it's unexpectedly much more north than what you would otherwise expect.
Yeah, they really went up there.
Yeah, so he keeps going up further. And here we get Herodotus telling us his version of the story, where Darius looks a bit silly, but it's Herodotus and he doesn't like Darius very much, so there we go.
Yeah, we figured.
So over in Scythia, after chasing all the Scythians, Darius sends an envoy asking them, why do you keep running away? If you think you're stronger than me, then you should just fight me and defeat me. But if you think you're weaker than me, then just give me tribute. And let's just finish this. We don't need to be doing this. You can go back to your pastures. I can go back home.
Instead of this incessant cat and mouse chase.
So the Scythian king then replied that, no, we're not running because we're scared. It's just that we don't really have any cities or fields to defend.
This is just what we do, man. Like, this is not the...
Yeah, this is just our strategy. We're not scared. It's just our lifestyle.
You're interpreting it incorrectly. We're not running away from you. We're just doing our thing, regardless of if you were here. Since you're there, we're just not going where you are, you know? Because logic. So essentially he told the nomads, can you stop being nomads for a second so I can, like, you know,
stand still and
deal with
get
you.
Stabbed or just surrender, please. I'm tired.
Yeah.
But the Scythian king says, if the Persians really want a battle, then they should just find the tombs of our ancestors and attack those. But nobody else knows where they are, so haha, good luck finding them.
Good point. Does Darius take this as a challenge?
Darius sort of, because by this point, Darius is running into difficulties. He's gone around close to Crimea at this point, and still no battles, still nothing.
Yeah. Just running after these people.
Yeah. And the Scythians then notice that Darius is running a bit short on supplies. You know, it's starting to get close to winter. It's going to be a mess if he's up there.
Yeah.
He needs to withdraw.
You can't do this forever if you're not used to being a nomad.
Yeah, exactly. And sure, he built some forts, but they're not like massive cities and everything. They're able to hold the area reasonably well, but not forever.
Where's your agriculture now?
Yeah. So the Scythians see that if they wait just a little bit longer, Darius is probably going to have to turn back and we can be done with this. So how do they make Darius wait? Well, they send him a messenger bringing the gift of a bird, a mouse, a frog, and 5 arrows.
Uh-huh.
And the messenger tells the Persians, oh, well, we've heard of your great wisdom, so if you will interpret our message, we will have peace.
Uh-huh.
So, Darius and his nobles start trying to discuss, what does this mean?
No
what
way this can go wrong.
What are these things? So Darius actually reasoned that this was actually the Scythians surrendering.
Of course he did. Of course.
Because a mouse is the creature of the earth. A frog is the creature of water. A bird is most like a horse. Herodotus doesn't explain why this connection was made. I guess they're both fast or something. Yeah. It's weird.
Don't you look at a bird, and any bird, and a horse, and you're like, ah, yes.
Exactly the same. Very good. And then he says the 5 arrows are the Scythians surrendering their weapons ceremonially to Darius.
Of course. You go with that.
Yeah. However, Gobryas, one of the 7 conspirators, instead thought that the meaning was more aggressive. It was saying, unless you become birds, Persians, and fly up into the sky, or mice and hide into the earth, or frogs and leap into your lakes, you will be shot by these arrows and never return home.
I like that interpretation. It makes more sense too, instead of just the delusional, yes, they're surrendering, look, of Darius.
But what was the real interpretation? The Scythians were just messing with them.
Yeah, obviously. I was like, there's no interpretation. They just sent random things and we're like, woohoo.
So while Darius was sat there for a week or so trying to discuss and figuring out what is this thing, are they surrendering, are they attacking, what's going to happen? The Scythians sent some ambassadors to the Greek guards of the bridge on the Bosphorus and bribed them to abandon their guard and allow the Scythians to go and burn the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So when Darius notices that actually, the guards are leaving. Wait, what? Is our bridge unsafe? Yeah. We can't go home? Oh no.
Oh, whoopsie.
Sort of concludes a quick peace and runs back to Asia where he is going to be safe again.
It was a trap.
Now this is the version of Herodotus, so we're not sure how likely it was, the Scythians tricked Darius, haha, silly man.
I was just thinking, when you were explaining to me this, I was like, I mean, this is very biased against Darius and trying to make him look like a fool.
Yeah, exactly. And it's probably more reasonable to assume that by the time it got late, it was roughly winter.
Yeah.
Darius thought, it's not worth it anymore. And in fact,
let's go back. Yeah. We're not going to catch them. Nothing has changed. Yeah. So,
and we get reports that he probably concluded peace. Like even Herodotus tells us that the Scythians were...
That he managed some kind of...
Yeah, Herodotus tells us that the Scythians were scared enough of Darius that they stopped their raids on the Achaemenid Empire and also agreed to give tribute.
Okay, well, that's better than I would have expected.
So that doesn't sound like a complete failure. That sounds like a good way. So it's more likely that Darius did this whole march up north. The Scythians were impressed enough that they decided, okay, fine, we accept your terms. This is okay. And Darius went back home. In the meantime, we also have a whole new additions to the empire under Darius' lieutenants.
Huh.
Because Thrace, so the land just across the Bosphorus in Europe, was added to the empire. Several Greek cities were conquered by Darius' generals. And King Alexander I of Macedon submitted voluntarily to the Achaemenid Empire and became their vassal.
Related to the Great?
His distant ancestor, yes.
I see.
And yeah, in the meantime, the satrap of Egypt annexed Cyrene, so the Greek cities in the east of modern Libya. And so the empire is now pretty nice and big. And in total, this added 4 new satrapies to the empire, called overseas Scythia, Thrace, and Macedonia, Thessalia and Greek islands, and Libya.
Okay, well, overall, he did the conquering.
Yeah, he did the conquering, and now he can return home to administer the empire as a good king should.
Yeah, now, before it breaks up again, you fool.
You'd hope. Also, we get a weird story from Titius that I'm going to tell you just because it's very strange.
Yay, weird story time.
Titius. So it's a weird story about the death of Darius' parents.
Oh.
So apparently Darius ordered some masons to build a tomb for himself. And his parents decided to go up to the hill that it was being built on to see how the work was going.
The tomb for my son.
Yeah. Weird choice, but sure.
Yeah.
However, to get on top of the hill, his parents needed to be hoisted up with ropes.
What kind of hill was this? A cliff?
Very unclear. I don't know. Titius has not great spatial reasoning.
I see.
So some priests decide to hoist up Darius' parents. But they saw some snakes just next to the ropes while they were lifting up the parents.
Oh no, and we know that snakes come from the earth and they represent the Persians.
Exactly. This has been happening way too much. And so they freaked out, letting go of the ropes, and so the parents plummeted to their deaths.
Oh, how fun.
What do you think Darius did?
Killed the priests and tortured them before killing them and cut off some parts of their bodies and crucified them?
Almost. He just killed them. He was feeling merciful that day.
Oh, because, his parents, whatever.
Yeah, it's like, sure. It's not Babylon, They're nice, but... But now we finally get to the administration of the whole empire. So, Darius has an empire he can rebuild.
True.
How does Darius invent imperialism?
That's what he wanted to do, right? So...
Yeah, because if you remember, under Cyaxares and then Cyrus and Cambyses and all these people, they were kings of kings, literally.
Yes, that was the point.
They were literally ruling over other kings, and it was a very fragmented empire. Not exactly fragmented, but more of a federal thing.
Easier to put together. A bit of administrative nightmare, but everything rules itself, so
Yeah, sort of everything runs itself as it used to run itself. The only thing is that they just point the taxes towards Persepolis.
Under new management.
But Darius sees that this is an issue. Well, first of all, because the rebellions that started at the beginning of his reign were a sign that the empire isn't as united as you think it is.
Yeah.
You don't want to deal with, at every succession, a massive empire explosion.
True.
Every time the empire looks a little bit weak. So a better idea is to just get rid of all these sub-kings, or at least the scary ones, and restructure the empire in something that is truly centralized. So if you remember, Cyrus had established these satrapies around the empire.
Yes, this little...
sort of provinces. And Darius decides, let's reproduce this throughout the entire empire. Everything is going to be organized in units that are too small to rebel on their own, and that can be administered through government officials that I send.
Okay.
Not some local king that has been there for generations and has the loyalty of the local people. No, it's going to be an official that I'm sending from the nobility who's going to be there and govern.
Okay, yeah. So essentially provinces. Yeah.
Yes, it's provinces. And this is going to influence, later on the Seleucid Empire, then the Romans, then the British Empire and friends.
Hey.
So this is pretty much the basis for most imperialism, where you break up the local people and ensure that it works and they serve you as appropriate.
Yeah. Not fun. For the locals.
Yeah. But the good thing here is that Darius isn't really suppressing the local identities.
Oh, good.
He is sort of keeping up Cyrus's method, Cyrus's spirit of, I don't care who you worship or what you believe or what your culture is, just pay taxes.
That is always refreshing. Not perfect, but
Yeah, he's keeping that up and ensuring that it works. And he also has, he's crowned as a pharaoh in Egypt, all that sort of thing. What he is doing is ensuring that the administration is broken up.
Yeah.
Also, another thing that he does is he reforms the army. Because, well, he's been fighting all this time.
Yeah, he better...
He knows what didn't work, he knows what worked. And so he turned it, again, from a series of different regional contingents, from, this is the Median army, this is the Persian army, this is the Susan army, this is the Babylonian army.
The Susan army. I'm glad you adopted it.
And yeah, so he restructures it into one unified thing where, yes, everybody's distinctive fighting style is considered, but we're not having separate armies for separate people anymore. Okay. And also, he establishes as the core of his army 10,000 immortals.
Okay. I mean, having immortal people in your army is always a good move. Always do that if you can. But my scientific mind is a bit skeptical about this one.
I mean, they're called immortals just because there's always a constant number of them.
I see.
So the idea is that there's always 10,000, and these are the elite troops that are kept.
Okay. I like that.
Although I saw it debated how real these are, because these immortals are cited by Herodotus, but doesn't seem like any local Iranian source talks about them. So it's either Herodotus making this up,
he was just feeling saucy that day. It was like,
yeah,
let's add a little bit of pizzazz.
Yeah, and the immortals are going to be quoted like far into the Sasanian period.
Okay.
Even though it's no longer this actual body, so it'd be maybe a mistranslated term. Yeah. The Royal Guard or something.
Or he's just a man. And men make mistakes.
Who makes more mistakes than Herodotus?
Well, yeah.
Teaches.
Yeah.
That's the answer. So now Darius is in charge of a massive empire of 50 million people. In the largest empire the world has ever seen. And it is now divided into 20 different satrapies, where Persia is the only one that doesn't pay taxes. Because, well, they're the heart of the empire. It's fine.
Yeah, you don't tax the rich because they're your friends. So you don't tax Persia because it's your closest.
Yeah, like Italy wasn't really taxed under the Roman Empire. Generally, the people who are closest to overthrow you, you don't want to make them angry.
Seems a little bit unfair, but okay.
Darius isn't about fair.
Yeah.
He does not care at all. All of these satrapies, as I mentioned, India is the richest by far of all of them. Herodotus actually provides us with a full list of how much tribute each different satrapy gave. And India gives massive bags of gold dust to Darius to ensure that the empire works. Outside all the satrapies, then Darius is also getting tribute from outside the empire. So from the kingdom of Kush, which was the one south of Egypt that Cambyses attacked.
Oh, yeah.
So Darius didn't campaign there. Cambyses is probably the one who succeeded in getting tribute. And then he also gets tribute from the Colchians and the Arabians, who send him gifts. And what is the best way to collect taxes and ease trade? Money!
Hey!
Yay! We no longer need to barter with sacks of metal, but we can actually use coins. Because there was money, but it was mainly sort of isolated in the kingdom of Lydia, with all the Cresids and all that.
Cyrus kept it because he thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, because Cyrus kept it, but he decided that in the spirit of keeping everything as it is already, he didn't really spread it throughout the empire.
I see.
But Darius has broken down every door he could, so everybody is going to learn how to use money now.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
This was my plan, okay? And you do as I say, or else. Points at the crucifixion section.
Yes. Points at the giant sculpture where it says that he killed 9 kings in 19 battles.
Yeah.
So don't.
Please.
So he introduces 2 different denominations of coins. silver coins that the Greeks called siglos, 20 of which would then equal 1 gold coin that the Greeks call a Daric.
Do we know what the names were in the actual region?
Not really, because they don't have words on them.
Oh, okay.
Just,
So, and the Greeks didn't bother to like record the Persian way.
No, they didn't.
Great.
They
Self-centered.
Just say, well, Darius made these, so let's call them Darics. Sure, they'll be fine.
Cool.
Their images are basically a stylized little Persian king.
Okay.
And I'll show you this later in the portrait section. And I have a replica here with me.
Oh, that's so cool.
So on one side, there is a stylized king with the attributes of kingship. So a bow and a crown, looking all very regal. But again, it's not like a face yet.
Yeah.
That still hasn't been invented. There's no still portrait on a coin.
It's just the logo of a king. This is represents a king.
It's a general picture of what a king looks like. And then the other side has basically a punch, a hole where...
You know, how you make the coins.
used.
Because you make them by hand with a hammer or something.
Yeah. And so the idea is that these coins weren't really used for everyday sort of things, but they were more of a, more of a large expenses sort of thing, or long distance trade.
Yeah, it would make sense that if people in a village are exchanging goods and services, they would still be just doing it the old way, because...
Yeah, doing some very rough calculation, the estimate is that for the modern day, for like a person, a Daric would be the equivalent of having a 2,000 euro coin.
Whoa.
And a siglos like a 100 euro coin.
Okay, yeah.
So you're not going to use them every day.
Yeah.
You're going to use them, Darics for very big expensive and siglos for medium-sized expenses, but you're not going to buy bread with them.
Yeah, no. Or your, like,
That's overkill.
Your coffee.
Yeah. So now we can trade throughout the empire and, well, you don't have to deal with, I don't know what these people use to trade. You can trade from India to Egypt to Thrace easily with the same coin method.
That's very impressive.
But to get throughout all these places, Darius also decides to enhance trade more. So he builds improved roads throughout the empire. He builds the Royal Road, which goes from Susa to Sardis. So it basically goes from Mesopotamia all the way to the coast of the Aegean.
Amazing.
And this is basically a lifeline that goes throughout that section of the empire.
Yeah, roads are so important, especially when you didn't have that many of them. Because have you ever tried to go off path anywhere? It's a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're trying to get like a large amount of stuff going through, if you're getting a group of big carts. If you're through a muddy, terrible road, you're not going to get very far. But if you have a nice, beautiful, organized road, then yeah, sure, you're going to be a lot quicker.
And then things start popping up at the sides of the road because people need to rest and to recover and to, and then some people stay there and yay.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Darius also institutes his own setup there. So there are different little houses at 1 day's ride distance where government officials can get food and fresh horses for free. And regular people can also do that when they're traveling along the road. They can just, although they'll have to pay for it, of course.
Interesting. Very monopolized.
Yeah, sure, but,
That's the point.
And yeah, he also builds canals crossing between different rivers to ensure that if you're traveling by boat, you don't have to get off the boat. So everything is very well connected. And he also systematized the extraction of tribute from the satrapies. And to do this, he did something very important and intelligent, which is unifying weights and measures.
Oh, yes.
Because imagine the imperial system, but worse.
Yes.
Imagine if you had the imperial system, but every day or two of travel, the values of a mile or a pound or an inch changes.
God.
And you're a merchant trying to go from India to Egypt to trade something, and the units change every couple of days. It's mad.
That's terrible.
You don't want to do this. This is insane.
I'm so glad he was like, hey, we need an empire-wide system, please.
Yeah, so he establishes these new weights and measures that can finally be used throughout the entire empire so that we're no longer doing this Cyrus thing where you can keep your local measurements. We're doing something that is actually organized throughout the empire.
Yes, because it makes sense.
It works if you want to build a unified identity.
Yeah, if you are communicating throughout the empire, if you are actually, I was going to say globalizing, but it's not a globe, but you know.
Sort of, yeah. International.
Yes, it would make it very difficult. So.
And another element that he does is he does a lot of great works.
Oh.
So he travels to Egypt in 497 BC and opens a canal joining the Mediterranean to the Red Sea.
Oh. Okay.
This will not be equaled until the Victorian Age.
Incredible. Yeah, I was going to say that's some feat of architecture right there and engineering.
Yes, it's a massive feat of engineering. And it's not in the exact same place where the Suez Canal is now. It actually takes advantage of the Nile.
Oh.
So it's basically a little bit down the Nile, and then it cuts through, connecting to a lake, and then goes into the Red Sea.
So it connects the Nile to what?
The Nile to the Red Sea, which is then connected to the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf and all that. So now you can realistically take a ship from Persia and go to Europe.
Awesome.
And you don't have to get off your ship.
Yes. That's amazing.
Which is really cool.
Will we have maps about this on the episode?
Yes, you will have maps.
I'm asking for our listeners. I know everything, obviously.
So this canal may have been started by some previous Egyptian pharaohs.
Okay.
So it's unclear if Darius has built it from scratch or just dug up this canal, which had been swallowed by the sands.
But definitely took the credit for it.
Yeah, but it's definitely,
and it's done. It's done.
Work. It's working. Yeah.
Yeah. He put the last stone, and I was like, yes.
Yes, just like boop, done. And yeah, he sponsored very large construction projects in Susa, Babylon, Egypt, and Persepolis. Okay. And he began the building of the beautiful, beautiful palace complexes in Persepolis, which will mostly be completed by his son, but Darius begins the whole setup, and it's.
He's gonna have such high marks. He's gonna have such high marks. Because I was kind of hating him at the beginning. Also because we had a very anti-Darius source that we were going through. Yeah. And it's very intense and murdery and but that just gives him shock factor and scheminess. Yeah, and now we have that he's also good for the empire and also good for culture. And I'm like, oh no, he's going to score in everything.
Yes, exactly.
And we have coins, so we even have some kind of representation of a king, which counts as.
And we have the massive inscription that he made, where he shows himself submitting other kings.
Yeah, I give up.
He's doing well.
Gonna shoot
the boys
right
doing
up.
Good. Yeah, and also as I mentioned about the whole multiculturalism thing. Yes. The empire was built to take advantage of different cultures present and to use the local knowledge. And the empire didn't have only one official language, but multiple official languages based on the region to ensure that everybody knew how it works. Okay. And everyone's expertise was used when necessary. So the Phoenicians are great sailors. They get that. Cool.
That makes sense if you have multiple language in an empire. It makes sense to put things in multiple languages just because you want people to be able to communicate. That's part of the deal.
Yeah, and the court gets a lot of people from all over the empire. The Egyptians are incredibly experienced surgeons and doctors.
Yes.
Well, they're at the court now because it's important to make use of
medicine.
All the empire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when opening up bodies as part of your funerary tradition,
you learn a lot.
You get to figure out anatomy well enough. Yay. You don't have to dig up bodies in the night. In Europe, you don't have to hide away. It's easy. But now we get towards the tail end of Darius's life. And you'll notice I didn't mention the Greeks. They're
true.
Around. They exist.
We just, ignore that part of the geography.
Yeah. So in 510 BC, we find that the Asiatic Greeks, so the Greeks on the coast of Anatolia, who were conquered by Cyrus quite a while ago, were being governed by a series of local lords, oligarchies, depending on the city, that were subservient to Darius and just gave tribute as they would.
Okay, so he didn't make them into a province with his own ruler, but...
No, they keep their sort of semi-independence. And Darius sees that this is working well enough, so he sponsors several of these Greek people to go back to mainland Greece and spread the word of how great it is to be in the Achaemenid Empire. Everything is going really, really well. Wouldn't you people also like to join? If you want to, feel free.
Yeah, look at our market and like how we're using money and the culture exploding, and oh my goodness, it's excellent.
Yeah. Did you ever want goods from India? You can get them now. That's our fault. That's our merit. We did everything.
It's not our fault. What?
Yeah.
Huh?
So it starts to spread a bit into mainland Greece as well. And at this point in 500 BC, the deposed oligarchs of the island of Naxos appealed to the satrap of Lydia to try and bring them back into power. And in exchange, well, they could negotiate a tribute. And the satrap says, okay, fine. Sounds like a good deal. Here are some soldiers. You can go off to take back your island. However, this expedition failed because there was a disagreement between the tyrant of Miletus, which is a Greek city on the coast of Anatolia, and the leader of the expedition. So the expedition failed because of this disagreement.
Okay.
So at this point, this Greek tyrant then decided to organize a massive revolt among the Greek cities to avoid consequences. So he collects the support of all these Greek cities that were chafing under the Achaemenid authority, and they launch an attack on the capital of Lydia, which is Sardis. And they actually managed to burn Sardis to the ground, which is not great.
Nope.
And Darius is not happy.
Yeah, again. I thought I had it all under control. And
damn it! I was doing nice things now. Why don't they like me? Yeah, so at this point, these Ionian cities call for help from mainland Greece. And two cities answer. The city of Eretria and a little-known city-state on the eastern coast called Athens.
Okay, I thought you were going to say Sparta. I was so ready.
No, Sparta wouldn't have joined.
I know.
Spartans
I
don't
thought
help
we
people.
were just going to showcase how they join in the last moment when they know who's going to win. And then they're like, oh, haha, we won.
Yeah, the Spartans decided, ooh, that looks hard. Let's stay home.
Yeah.
We'll be fine. Let the Athenians deal with it. Also, it's important to note that Athens right now isn't important.
Okay.
Like, Athens is only the Athens we know because of what happens in these years.
So now they're becoming, is their coming of age story. The birth of Athens.
So now, Athens is just a random other city like Eretria, and they're helping out. They decide to send a few ships and help
Poor
out.
Eretria. You're like, oh, they're just a random city like Eretria.
I mean, yeah, you'll find out why Eretria is a random city soon enough.
Oh no.
Because Darius sends his army to Ionia, and in 6 years manages to retake it all entirely. But he's annoyed that somebody from mainland Greece sent their help.
Yeah.
So he decides, you know what, let's show Athens and Eretria that they don't mess with us and just get away with it.
I thought we were in good terms. I offered them to join. If they didn't, fair, I thought it would be better for everybody. But we had an agreement going on, so nobody was getting hurt. And they still wanted to poke me. And so now, fire, death, vengeance, destruction.
Yes. So yes, Darius decides to send an expedition into Greece. So the first one is under the son of Gabryas,
Okay.
called Mardonius, who you want to write down because he'll pop up in the next episode as well.
I wonder why.
And he sent this first army across the Hellespont, and it tries to cross through Macedon and go down into Greece from the north. But this is sort of stopped because there are some raids from the barbarians in the north, from the Thracians, and they're sort of forced to take another route because this isn't working. It's too much trouble. So he sends a new expedition under a man called Datis the Mede.
Okay.
Of about 20,000 men with a fleet. So he's sending them across the sea. Yes, it's going to be a bit more trouble because if you're landing an army, that's always a vulnerable time. But it's probably the most direct way. You'll see how it goes. So he sends this first fleet and they head for Eretria first. And they get to Eretria, they take it, burn it to the ground. No more Eretria.
Okay, so that's why.
Yes, that's why you don't hear from them. Next, Darius, in 490 BC, is guided by a former tyrant of Athens, and they land at the plain of Marathon in late summer.
Oh.
There, they find 9,000 heavy Athenian infantry, 600 Plataeans, and another 10,000 lightly armed attendants under the Athenian general Miltiades. And there at the Plain of Marathon is the reason why Athens becomes important.
Ooh, I see.
Because, surprising pretty much everyone, Miltiades managed to take advantage of the fact that Darius' fleet is disembarking and is not ready, and their cavalry doesn't have space to maneuver in the tight valleys. So Miltiades manages to defeat Darius' force and send them back into the sea.
Is this the first time he's defeated like that?
I mean, he's been pushed back a bit, but it's the first time that's a clean defeat, let's say.
That's the feel I was getting. I'm like, I mean, he hasn't won every battle, but I don't recall him.
Lost anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So Athens has won.
Oops. What now?
To explain where you get marathons from.
Yes.
Miltiades sent a messenger from Marathon to Athens to run and say, we won, we won. And so this messenger ran the amount of kilometers of a marathon.
Incredible.
And arrived to Athens, shouted Nike, which means victory, and then died.
Because that's a lot for a human body to run.
Yeah, especially if you've recently been in a battle.
Yeah.
I would be tired too.
But they needed to let them know.
Yeah. But Athens has won, and Athens is now looked to by the rest of Greece as, oh, you've defeated the Persians that one time. That was impressive. Ooh.
This is why the one battle is why.
I mean, there are more battles later, but this is the start of it.
Incredible. I love the marathon story. It's always a good story.
It's a good story.
But they had horses now, so why send this poor man running?
It's terrible. It's a hilly place. If you remember, it's a place where we almost ran out of gas in Greece. There's a lot of tiny little hills.
Oh, yeah. It's true. I remember the songs we were listening to when we parked.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I have very specific memories. But yeah.
And we bathed in the Sea of Marathon, which was...
Oh, that was fun. But yes, I guess since you were saying like, oh, things were hard to maneuver and such, I imagine maybe the landscape wasn't horse friendly.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, like being in Babylon where it's mostly flat and you can just mass a bunch of horses. You need to be more careful. And, well, the Athenians, they've been trained for this. This is the only warfare they know, so they're going to be better at it.
Understandable.
So after the failure of this expedition, Darius decided, okay, I guess I shouldn't have delegated. I'll go myself and destroy Athens.
Yeah. I'll show them, okay, it's fine. This has been a fun little hiccup, but okay, now for real.
Yeah, it's like, fine, sure. But according to Persian law, if you remember, Darius needs to choose an heir before he leaves on campaign.
True.
And he has 2 sons that are sort of vying for power.
Wonderful.
The first one is called Artabazanes, and was the son of Gobryas' daughter, and Darius, and was his eldest son.
Okay.
So far that's
heir,
been the logical aim.
Didn't he want a son with Atossa, since that would link him to the Cyrus lineage?
Exactly, because Atossa also has a son called Xerxes.
Ah.
And Atossa wants her son to succeed.
Yes. As a good mother,
So we get that a discussion ensues, and people try to understand how to justify that Xerxes will be the ruler.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's decided that Xerxes, unofficially, because he's the great-grandson of Cyrus. No, he's just the grandson of Cyrus.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's like direct connection.
Long, but yeah, so he's just the grandson of Cyrus, unofficially. But officially, the idea is, well, Xerxes was the first son that was born to Darius when he was king. So that makes him more legitimate to succeed. He was the first one born as a prince. While Artabazanes was born as just the son of a random noble.
Okay.
Xerxes was born as a prince.
But it is Darius' son.
Yes, it is his.
Okay, so he's just younger than... Okay.
Yeah, he's just slightly younger.
I'm sure the older brother won't have any problem with that at all.
We'll see. In the next episode.
Uh-huh.
So at this point, Xerxes is made heir to the throne, and Darius continues his plans for an invasion of Greece and an attack on Athens, but his health begins to fail, and there's a minor revolt in Egypt he has to deal with, so he doesn't have time. And so he doesn't really make it, and he dies in October of 486, before he could launch his new expedition.
I feel like it's been a few years. Like, we've been going on forever, and lots has happened, so...
Yes, this man has reigned for a very, very long time. But, yeah, there we go. So, thoughts on Darius?
Ooh, many. So, he doesn't get to crush Athens himself.
No, he leaves this to his son Xerxes, who is going to inherit this grudge match against Athens. Because all he has to do is burn Athens to the ground, and then nobody will ever remember Athens. It'll be like Eretria, and it'll be fine.
Yes.
So there we go.
Excellent.
Yes.
Let's
get to rating.
Woo!
So, first category is final moments. How interesting was his death?
The least interesting of his whole life, really.
Yes.
I mean,
out of a very interesting
the kind
life,
of death
he just
you would
faded.
like, I guess, of just, peacefully just going away.
Yeah, let me check how old he was, actually. I'm not sure. 486 is when he died. And he was 550, so 64 years. It's not, it's not terribly.
Yeah, it's not so
I'd prefer
old.
older, but, still, for the time, reasonable enough.
I guess, yeah. A lot of stress went into his life,
Yes, I can imagine the poor man, after the 5 years he had to constantly subdue revolts, was probably tired.
Hence the exasperation.
Yes, the very exasperated ending. So what is your opinion?
A 0.
0. Yeah.
Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
There's nothing interesting.
It just died.
I was wondering if it won, but yeah. 0 out of 10
What
for
for?
final moments.
Yeah.
Next category is battle hardness. How good was he at fighting and conquering and being the king of kings that stabs people?
Very good. We did get to see a lot of battles. Like we said, he didn't straight up win all of them, but he only lost like one, and it wasn't even him in the battle.
Yeah,
so
and in Marathon, he wasn't really trying. It was just, sure, let someone else deal with it. And it's like, oh, you lost? Oh, fine, I guess I'll try.
Yeah, and honestly, he did seem to be present for a lot of the battles and personally go through them. See the Siege of Babylon.
Yeah, exactly.
And overall, a good warring king.
Yeah, and he was personally leading. He went up to Scythia.
I feel like really good.
Sort of stuff.
I mean, I don't know if a 10, because I feel like you need to do something very impressive for a 10.
Yeah, I feel like the 10...
there should be like a whoa moment of, oh my god, this was like incredible.
He did a good job. I mean, although the whole mess of civil wars where he had basically nothing and had to rebuild. He had to reconquer the whole empire.
Yeah. He lost everything because he wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
But that is more, empire-wise than battle-wise. But yeah, I guess like a 9 or an 8.
I'm more for a 9, because honestly I was wondering if a 9 or a 10, but I think a 10 has to be more like...
Yes. Then a 9 from me as well.
Gold star, perfect.
Yes.
Excellent.
For a 10, you have to do something extra. Not just win,
10,
but like...
I need cool battle details. I need everything. I need perfect record.
Which, to be fair,
Darius
is not...
very good, but...
Yeah. It's not fair to Darius because, like, having cool battle details is not,
Yeah, that's not his fault.
No.
We'll do what we can. We get the Babylon detail. That's true.
I
don't know if that's cool, but
that was a cool war story. I was there. I have the images in my head.
Nice. Okay, so battle hardness, a 9 and a 9 gives us an 18 out of 20 for battle hardness.
Terrible Papyrus just losing his mind.
Poor Papyrus.
Yeah.
So Darius is now the highest ranked battle hardness person.
As he should.
Fair enough.
Won't be the last one he excels at.
Yeah. Next category is another one he excels at, scheminess.
Hey!
How good is this man at scheming? He murdered the king.
Yes.
He killed Bardia. Not only did he kill Bardia, he rewrote all of history to ensure that his version was the only true one.
It's
he
so
ensured
intense.
that Bardia was actually supposed to be an imposter, Cambyses was actually supposed to be a mad tyrant, and Cyrus was actually meant to be an Achaemenid.
So basically 80% of the things we have discussed so far in this podcast might just be his retelling, because that's what we have.
Yes, which I love, and it's
Excellent.
so massive. And then, yeah, if you want to add some smaller scheminess, there's a Pyrus thing.
I love smaller
perhaps.
scheminess, you know, like teaching his horse and whatever. And like smaller
horse thing,
scheminess is fun because you get to see the letter passed in the shadows under the door and the glances exchanged in a room. But like literally rewriting all of history. Come on.
Yes, and it was a thing that nobody ever suspected. There's like no ancient source that quotes him as being a usurper. Like, not even Herodotus got a glimpse of this, not even Titius.
Amazing. Incredible. But now to us, it's kind of, well, I was going to say clear. Not clear, obviously, but like, it's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that he was telling the truth, but come on, he wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. But for us, it's very obvious that he probably was a usurper, but then none of the ancient sources say it. Which is weird.
Yeah, nobody even mentions the possibility,
wow.
So...
How do we have better... Aren't we missing something? How do we have a better view than people living at the time?
Well, we just have the archaeological record from Egypt
that's
where
fair.
we know, okay, Cambyses did commission
yes.
a sarcophagus for
True.
Apis. Cambyses was reforming the tax
We have
system.
the bigger picture.
We have more pictures there, so it's easier to figure it out.
That was excellent. I am very tempted to give him a 10. Because does anybody else, with your future knowledge, does anybody else do anything similar to this?
I think similar, maybe, but I don't know if anything on this scale. Like, I'm trying to think of why not to give him a 10.
Let's go. Let's do it. He deserves it. 10. This is the special thing you need to get a 10. Rewrite all of history in your favor. I do not approve of this, by the way. Please, people, don't do this.
So with 10 and 10, Darius has 20 out of 20 of scheminess being the most schemy person
anybody
ever.
Think that we would give him anything but?
No, of course not. Next category, still probably going to be good. Shock factor.
God,
much murder.
So much blood. Oh, suffering.
Well, again,
torture.
First thing is killing your king. Secondly, brutally murdering 9 different kings
and describing it and putting it on display and crucifying people and raising the walls of Babylon to the ground, and it just keeps going.
And just being a usurper overall on its own is a pretty good thing. I don't feel like he was cruel for the hell of it. I think he was more cruel because it was useful, though. I don't see him just randomly killing
but to be fair, if he had been that and it hadn't worked, we wouldn't know that much about him anyway.
Fair enough, sure.
I'm not a fan of cruelty, but yeah.
No, definitely not. Here I'm not really aiming for a 10.
No, me neither.
I think it's...
But I feel like an 8 is probably fair.
An 8? Really?
Well, you know,
that's
so much happened.
Okay, so you're just under Cambyses.
Maybe an 8 would be more because of Herodotus's stories.
Sure, Herodotus is...
So I would give the 8 to Herodotus and not to Darius.
I don't know. I think I'll be just under. I think I'm going to go with a 7. Because...
I might join you at a 7. I feel like I went a bit...
Because I don't think he's Astyages level of... Mad destruction. I think he's more... He's a cruel but pragmatic ruler. It is shocking, but it's not the worst thing he could have done.
I'm still thinking of Zephyrus. Just the poor man.
Zephyrus. And he comes into the story, and I love that he's the son of Megabyzus, and the whole family comes into the story for a while.
Yeah.
And I love them. They're great.
Excellent.
So shock factor 7 and 7?
I feel like that's fair.
Very well. So with a 7 and 7, 14 out of 20, which makes him the second most shocking ruler after Cambyses.
That's...
And just above Astyages, which I think is fair, honestly.
Correct, yeah.
Next category, also good for him, like all the categories.
Yes.
Aaron Shine. How good was he for the Empire? What did he do?
Well, I am so impressed because for once, it's not just like, oh, he conquered things, which like, yes, but like he lost them first and then he conquered, and then he conquered a bit more, but like, you know, But what I'm most impressed is by all the changes he made to the empire to essentially consolidate it and dividing it in provinces that were ruled by his own appointed rulers, rearranging the armies, getting tribute from everywhere in an organized manner, establishing money throughout the empire, enhancing trade by building very important roads and communicating places better. updating the extraction of tribute by building canals and such. Just everything.
Building a Suez Canal 2,500 years before.
Exactly.
ours.
Nobody had done that, and nobody will in centuries.
And they will do it with the miracles of Victorian machinery and dynamite and all that.
How?
Yeah, a lot of manpower.
Yeah, I was going to say, probably slaves.
They don't really have slaves, actually. They're all paid, which is neat. Slavery is very limited in the Achaemenid Empire.
I didn't know this. That's awesome.
Yes,
wow.
They're all paid. We have a lot of records in clay tablets. And slavery was generally more of a palace thing, where you have like a special person who is a doctor. You conquer a city, you take all their specialists, and they're your slaves. But they can buy their freedom. And the weird thing is that, small tangent, they can rent themselves off their masters.
Oh,
so if a slave wants to go on holiday, he can just pay his master a certain amount of money and say, I'll be back in like 2 months. Okay, bye.
Incredible.
Bye, I'm back.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's actually very interesting. I didn't know that. It's just because I was thinking, for example, how other great structures in ancient civilizations and not so ancient civilizations have been constructed. And usually if there's not heavy machinery involved, it's manpower, i.e. usually unpaid labor.
Yeah, but that is also, for example, in Egypt as well. Like the pyramids were built with paid labor. They were built with people who were paid in beer and bread.
Interesting.
So you get to live there.
Fair.
It's very interesting. But yeah, I'm going to quote from the Tomb of Darius, where he describes himself and his achievements.
Oh,
why
of course, please. Go ahead.
So he says, I am Darius, the great king, king of kings, king of the countries containing all kinds of men, king of this great earth far and wide, son of Hystaspes, an Achaemenid, a Persian, son of a Persian, an Aryan having an Aryan lineage.
King of the universe.
Yes. King Darius says, by the favor of Ahura Mazda, these are the countries which I seized outside of Persia. I ruled over them, they bore tribute to me, they did what was said to them by me, they held my law firmly. And here's the list. Media, Elam, Parthia, Arya, Bactria, Sogdia, Chorasmia, Dranjana, Arachosia, Satyajidya, Gandhara, India, the Hauma-drinking Scythians, the Scythians with pointed caps, Babylonia, Assyria, Arabia, Egypt, Armenia, Cappadocia, Lydia, the Greeks, the Scythians across the sea, Thrace, and the Greeks that wear sun hats.
It's like these and this nation, and this group of people, and this other group of people.
And the ones that wear hats.
The ones that dress funny.
And it's really cool because in some of the palaces he sponsored in Persepolis, there's scenes of tribute from all of these cultural groups across the empire.
So
and
cool.
They're not really shown as subjects. They're shown as people bringing tribute as equals by the Persians.
Well,
so they're not shown under
wishful thinking, but sure.
Still, but as a symbology, it's nice that he's not stepping on their necks. They're all there bringing tribute. And it's fun because you can recognize them all from their caps and their different outfits, and it's really cool.
I wanted to say, he's not stepping on their necks like on the artwork where he's like, look how nice I am, but in reality, they're not bringing tribute like they did to Cyrus because they liked him.
Yeah, they're bringing tribute because it's the law now. This is how it works.
Because he is scary when he's angry. So we just do the thing.
Yeah, you wouldn't want him when he's angry. And another thing on his tomb is that he says, I am of such sort. I am a friend of the right. Of the wrong I am not a friend. It is not my wish that the weak should have harm done to them by the strong. Nor is it my wish that the strong should have harm done to him by the weak. The right is my desire. To the man who is a follower of the lie, I am no friend. I am not hot-tempered.
No.
When things develop in my anger, I hold firmly under control my thinking power. I am firmly ruling over my own impulses.
Look at all the impaled bodies. Can't you see?
It's fine. I thought coldly about that and decided it was the best course of action.
Exactly.
And then he says, the man who is cooperative, I reward him according to his cooperation. Who does me harm, I punish him according to the harm. It is not my wish that a man should do harm, nor indeed is it my wish that if he does harm, he should not be punished. What a man says against another man, it doesn't convince me until I hear the sworn statements of both sides. What a man does or performs according to his ability, by that I judge him. And it is much to my desire, and I am well pleased, and I give much to my loyal men.
I love when in these statements, old translations of statements, there's this constant reiteration of, I am a friend of the right, of the wrong, I am not a friend. But of the right, yes, I am.
It's the format, which is, it's fun. It's unusual to us, but I guess it was.
Yeah.
I guess it's how political speeches sound different to normal conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, fair enough. So, 10?
Yes. Obviously, we agree.
Perfect. So 10 gives us 20 for Darius the Great.
Yay.
Finally, Face of Faces.
Let's see. Oh, wait, I need to draw him.
Oh no. While you draw, I will read to you what Darius says about his physicality. So you can see. Always on his tomb. He says, "This is my capability. My body is strong. As a fighter of battles, I am a good fighter of battles. Whenever with my judgment in a place I determine whether I behold or do not behold an enemy, both with understanding and with judgment, then I think prior to panic, when I see an enemy as when I do not see one. I am skilled both in hands and in feet. As a horseman, I am a good horseman. As a bowman, I am a good bowman, both on foot and on horseback. As a spearman, I am a good spearman, both on foot and on horseback." So he is good at the king things.
Look at me, I'm big and strong and, healthy and cool and wise.
Yeah. Okay, so Serial sent me their drawing and it looks wonderful and I love it.
Yay!
So we have a very, very, very stressed looking Darius with a nice pointy crown and a very luxurious beard, which I quite enjoy, who is holding on to a disc of the Empire with many little cities on it, and it's all cracking, and he's just trying desperately to hold it together, and he's saying, "Just stay together, or else." So, yes, that I think encapsulates perfectly well the spirit of Darius the Great.
There were so many different vibes I could have chosen from, but this is the first one that came to mind, just him stressed, being like, I have killed 9 kings. Please, just stop it now.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'll show you how he displays himself killing the 9 kings. So this is the base to an inscription I've been mentioning all this time. So here you can see that there is Darius, here up top with the bow and everything. And then to his right are all the 9 kings that he has tied by their necks, being brought suppliants before Darius himself.
Wow. This relief is just, wow.
Yes,
very
and
intense.
Of all these heads, you can see all the different
the descriptions
explaining who they are.
That's so cool.
Also, another thing Darius did, he formalized Persian cuneiform.
Hey! That's
neat.
very helpful for everybody, especially the future.
Also, this fellow up here flying on a cloud is the Farvahar, who is a person who basically gives him the divine right.
Okay, good to know. Very cool.
And so let's get a bit of close-up on Darius' face. So here to the right, we see him in the base to an inscription.
Nice beard.
Zoomed in. It is a very nice beard. I like all the little curlies and the hair and the beard. It's very good.
Lots of detail.
Yeah, and he has a nice little hat crown sort of thing.
I see the coin. Okay.
Yeah, so here's an image of a Daric. So you see the king. It's very stylized. It's just a little man with a crown, a spear, and a bow. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
A symbol that people would understand as a king.
Right, so what do you think about him? Do you think he looks cool? What is your opinion overall?
I mean, the art is just so good. Like, the descriptions of everybody, I can't imagine the faces of the archaeologists who found it. Essentially, like, here's a comic with the descriptions of all the important people about this part of history.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that it was known for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Like, afterwards, I don't know if it was ever lost, but the thing is that the knowledge of reading what it was lost. So there were so many interpretations of what it might have been.
I see.
Was this a religious text? Was this some sort of other thing? No, it was just Darius.
No, it was just Darius.
Ye mighty watch upon my works in despair.
Explaining how things happened,
So what do you think? What would you give him for Face of Faces?
I mean, that is such a cool artwork. His face is,
high.
Cool.
Also,
whatever.
by the way, get used to seeing this face because all future kings will want to imitate this face.
Yeah, I felt like it was very stylized. Like, it's probably, not so much what he actually looked like, and just this is a king-like appearance.
Yes, but it's his fault that this is what a king looks like.
Yep. Ooh, that gives him more points.
Thoughts?
That gives him more points. I never know with this. And it's also contemporary, which is awesome.
It is. It is him specifically making it. It's the first one where the author is the one who made it.
Well, the author is always the one who made it.
Yeah, the author is the one who is being displayed. Yeah, so I'd say, I don't know. I think, I don't know why not a 10. You know what? I'm going to go a 9.
Me too.
Because of the stylization. Because if it looked like him, I'd be 10 all the way. But 9 because it's a cool scene. He looks cool. Just a tiny little loss for me.
Agree. That is perfect.
Very good. So our last number is 9 and a 9 for Face of Faces, which gives him 4.5 points out of 5.
Woo!
So the last category is instead lengthiness. How long did you think this man reigned?
So he lived about 60 years.
Roughly.
More or less. A bit more. 20 years. I was going to say 30, but, you know.
Actually, it is more. It is 36 years of reign.
Okay. Not to cut him short, just because, things happened before and there were a couple reigns and,
Yes. So remember, kids, if in your late 20s you haven't overthrown an empire, you're falling behind.
What are you even doing with your life? Huh?
So 3.6 points out of 5 for lengthiness, which leads us to a very, very impressive total score.
Woo!
It's a ridiculous 80.1 out of 100.
He lived his life in the perfect balance to win the rating on this show.
Yes, it was just all the drama. The final score is mostly drama points, and he has all the drama points.
Yep.
You could have done very little to be better, or, more interesting, let's say.
It's not just like, he was good for the Empire, so therefore we're ranking him high. No. Just like, according to our ranking system, he just did everything right.
Yeah, he was good for the Empire, and also a total scheming monster that we love, because he's so good.
Very cool.
He is over 20 points above the next nearest king. It
Incredible.
is ridiculous. So, I think we know the answer of the next question, which is he wonderful
Can
enough,
we move on?
impressive enough, great enough to be a Shahanshah, or did you suddenly get amnesia and decide to call him a Shahanna?
Yes, of course he is a Shahanshah. Let's move on.
Yay,
we knew it, of course.
So Shahanshah number 3. So he can go over to Cyrus and compare methods of ruling.
I guess.
And possibly tell Cyrus that he overthrew his entire dynasty and just placed his own on the throne and rewrote history to make it look like they were the same.
Hey. So, Cyrus still gets the honor, but not his family.
Yeah, but still. So there we go. That was a very long, very action-packed episode for Darius the Great. Ooh. Darius the First. There will be more Dariuses. Yeah, so the next episode is going to be Xerxes, his son, who has a revenge mission on Athens that he has to start, and some extra cool palaces he has to build in Persepolis.
Some unfinished business over there.
Yes. We need to show these Greeks that they won't last for long.
Clearly. Nobody shall remember Athens.
Never. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you for staying with us all this time. It's been
a long one.
A ride. But thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoyed everything.
Hope we kept it entertaining.
Yeah, so if you want to find us on our socials as Ranking Persia, on Twitter and Facebook. Leave us a review if you think this has been nice and you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it would be fun to read them.
Yes, we'd love to read any reviews you'd be able to send us, so have fun there. And yeah, so I think that's all that we have from our side.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week with Xerxes.
Woo.
Hooray!
Okay, until then, take care, everybody. Be nice.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.